In a previous video, I showed the new 120 frames per second shooting with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. But in that video, I just shot standard HEVC. Well, today I'm going to shoot out to an SSD with Apple ProRes Log. But I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to compare that image to my Sony FX30 and my RED Komodo. All right, while I'm waiting on the sun I want to get on top of the basketball goal there, I'll talk about what my setup is for the first shot. And the first shot is with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. I'm using a SSD. It's a little Samsung, I think it's an older one, a T5, yep. Got a Beast Grip Pro, and then I've got a slider here, which I'm not going to use. It's just mounted on my camera, but it's the wing, the Edelkrone wing. And then I've just got a basic Manfrotto tripod. But one interesting thing about the Moment case I'm using, this is the brand new one, it has the V&D, the interlock V&D. It's a 2 to 7 stop. And so this will really make my footage look much better, because in my previous video where I shot 120 frames per second, I didn't have an ND filter because the phone was new, I didn't have a case. And so now with the ND, I should get much better motion blur. I'm still using the native camera app though. At the time of this video, Blackmagic hasn't released the update to their app, although I know it's coming soon, and by the time this video is released, it'll probably be out. So look for that in the near future. But right now, I'm just using the native camera app, again, shooting 120 frames per second, Apple ProRes Log out to an SSD. All right, I had to change my setup. The building is blocking the sun and the pool, and I want to be able to see when the ball hits the ground. And so I moved the camera and I've reframed a little bit. And one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning was I'm also using a SSD holder from SmallRig. This is a third-party accessory, so it's not part of the Beast Grip Pro. All right, so I just got an alert on this that my drive is not fast enough to support, which is really weird because this is a really fast drive. So I'm going to switch to my T7 and see if that does any better. And I haven't played these shots back yet, but this is why you test. Okay, I'm back and I have replaced the drive. I'm now using my T7 drive. And I don't know if that's gonna make a difference. These drives should work. They work with high-end cameras, and so it should work here. But what I also did was I changed the cable. It's possible, I was using a little bitty cable, it's possible that cable was not fast enough. And so this is the cable that came with that drive. The other one was a third-party one. But definitely a learning curve here going out to 120 frames per second, because I've never had trouble going out 4K 60. So it appears that even this new T7 with the different cable still is having issues. And so I'm going to need to buy a faster SSD. Works fine with 24 frames per second and 60, but with 120, I'm getting drop frames. So just a note, but I am going to continue the test. Okay, here's the Sony FX30. This is a super 35mm camera. And so I've got an 18mm lens on here. And it's the same one I'm going to put on the RED. And I'm using a ND filter, a clip-on ND, it's a 1.2, and this will be on the RED camera as well. And I am using an adapter on this camera because this is a cine lens, it's a Mikey cine lens. And this is a EF mount lens, but I'm using a E mount to EF adapter from Sigma to make that work. And since this is Super 35, the crop factor on this one's a 1.5 compared to the RED, it's a 1.3. What I'm trying to do is get a similar focal length to the iPhone native 24mm. This would be approximately a 27mm in that range. And I've tried to line up the shots about the same distance, but that doesn't really matter because the way these other cameras work is there's a crop when you go into 120. But first I'll show 24 frames per second just as a baseline. And I am shooting S-Log 3. All right, now I'm going to switch this to 120 frames per second. And here we go. Okay, now I'm using a RED Komodo. This is a camera that I bought for a movie I shot and produced and directed. So what I've got here to try to make it match the iPhone as far as focal length is I've got an 18mm lens. This is a Super 35 sensor. And so I've got an 18 on here, which the crop factor would make this about a 23mm. And the main iPhone camera, which by the way, that's what I shot on, is a 24mm. So we're in the same vicinity with this. However, when we switch this to 120 frames per second, there is another crop. It crops in even further. Right now I'm shooting 6K 17:9 and at 24 frames per second. And I'll do one shot of that just to show the width. And then I'm shooting at like an f8 right now just to keep the exposure in check. And if you're interested in this camera though, or any of the gear in this video, I'll put links in the description. All right, now I've switched the RED camera to 120 frames per second. But when you do that, you have to crop in and lower the resolution. So now I'm shooting 2K 17:9, and I would say the crop is 50%. It's very dramatic. And so here we go. I wanted to do this example, not because I thought the iPhone would be better than either one of these cameras, but to show that not only is it cool that it doesn't crop in to do the 120, especially like the RED, but even the Sony crops in a lot. It allows you to shoot in its full frame. It's not full frame, but it doesn't crop in on the sensor to shoot the 120, but that the quality is pretty good. Actually really good if you're shooting to an SSD and you're doing ProRes Log, Apple ProRes Log. And the point being is this is why I use my iPhone as a B camera all the time with both these cameras. So I did have some challenges with the iPhone SSD drive, and I will be remedying that. I've actually got a couple different ones on order, which I'll make videos about. So don't use a T5 or a T7 when you're shooting 120. It works totally fine with 24 or 60, but not great with 120. Anyway, what do you think? Have you been shooting any 120 frames per second iPhone footage? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. This is Blake Calhoun. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.